Above the streets and houses, rainbow climbing high. Everyone can see it smiling over the sky. Paint the whole world with a rainbow.
You know, the passion that I love the biochemistry. I love looking at, you know, well, biochemistry, cellular chemistry and stuff, and studying that. I was started to do a diploma in it but couldn't finish it off. But I carried on the study. If you could spin the camera around, there's books everywhere on cellular biology and the vitamin Bible, the this, the that. That's like my passion. So I have got a basic understanding in this stuff, though not qualified, not medical in any way. This is my own personal discoveries, following the things that drew me into pursuing like more knowledge and more information, more accurate, you know, slant on this world. And so I'm going to start with what will lead into the mums and that coming on and talking at the end of this. I'm going to talk about chemicals, because that's where this starts, at the beginning. And everyone knows, you know, of an adage anyway, if you want to really get to the bottom of something nefarious, or if you want to get to the bottom of like, you know, what is motivating certain actions and certain things, the old adage is called follow the money. So like, we're going to follow the money, and it'll lead and direct straight to the situation that these young mums and thousands, well, every young mum in this country is facing, is going to face, or is going to confront, and is going to have to make, you know, really, really tough decisions. But I'm sure, like, you've got courage, and you will make the right ones once you've got the information. And the subject and the topic that had concerned these mums so much was that they found that when the children were going back to school, that there was a new curriculum going to be introduced. That the school, you know, without no consultation with the mums or the fathers or the children or anybody, had decided to operate in the status of, I can't remember the actual wording of a rainbow school. They were going to be a designated rainbow school. So what was so concerning about what changes when you become, because it was named after two saints, I believe, in the Bible. That was the school. So that obviously conjures up in the local population and the local mums and dads a certain ethos and a certain ethic and a certain way of looking at life. This school has adopted this affiliated to the rainbow. Something I've seen the rainbow everywhere through the pandemic. I see it everywhere through the NHS. I see it everywhere on some churches, if you would believe. So there's something that is, you know, this world is run on signs and symbolism in the background. They speak to the unconscious, and that's why all the secret societies use symbolism, and they use numbers, and and this rainbow has just come out of nowhere, seemingly, alongside of a lot of other things that have knocked the stability out of every family in the country, and the governments and the NHS, and everything has become unstable. It has become unfit for purpose, is probably a good way of putting these institutions at the moment. But people of like are sitting back, and it seems to be just going past them. These events, these life-changing, family-destroying events are going past them, and it's like on the Bruce Forsyth, the Generation Game. They're just watching these things pass them by on a conveyor belt, and they've got to try and remember them at the end, and they get a prize. This is what a lot of people, and these events are going past. I'm just going to bring another one of them into focus, and it's this rainbow status, this rainbow thing, and we've now been introduced to like Sesame Street type realities, and you've got LGBTQ, this, that and the other thing, and people are saying, you know, that they can pick one, like going into a sweet shop, like going into a supermarket. I'm going to identify as this. I watched one video not so long ago where a mother, maybe in her late 20s, early 30s, was absolutely outraged and was doing a video on this TikTok, and she was raving about how horrible and how uncaring and how that the school was that a young daughter attended who was 7 years of age, who identified as a cat, and she used to meow, and she used to wipe her whiskers, and she would lick her milk. This was videoed. This is real. It's not make-believe. This is not a comic or a cartoon. These people are for real. And she was chastising the school because, you know, they wouldn't accept that her daughter was a cat, and she'd lick her milk, and this is what's been going on in the background, and it's now become like endemic everywhere. You know, it's been introduced by these maniacs who introduced us to all of it. The autism, the NHS being imploded, the same people who are destabilising the country and destroying our lives have now introduced by the back door an attack on our children, and they've come for their minds, they've come for their stability, they've come for their childhood, and they are going to dump sewerage into their young minds that should be discovering how wonderful the flowers are, how amazing the birds and the wildlife is, how incredible they are as individuals. They're going to have this sewerage dumped into their minds, and which is just as deadly to their well-being as the sewerage that's been dumped into men and women's arms. These people are destroyers. These people are enticers. And I'm going to talk about a chemical, because we're going to follow the money. In this video, I want you to follow a guy called John Money, because what we're living through now, the gun crime and the drugs running wild and the lawlessness and the rampaging, you know, are the results of careful experimentation by evil people who done a video on one, called it Rat City. They're calling them 15-minute cities, and they were based on experiments. They were based on experiments by a professor called Calhoun, and you can watch them when you finish this. But in Mouse City, and this fella said what they'd created was hell. They cut the actual experiments short. That was one of them, and they've developed the housing estates for us on the back of that. And some of them housing estates now all live in hell. It's what they were designed to be. And you had the Milgram experiments. I'm not sure whether that one was the prison officers, and they assigned one group of college students as the prison officers and one group of students as the prisoners, and they moved into a mock cell block, and they reenacted that, and these people's minds went within a matter of days. They were yelling at each other, they were brutal to one another, the prisoners were terrified. This was just an experiment, and this is what you can do with people's minds and with people's psyches, with the right input and with the right information, and you press the right buttons. And these people who control the policies that are coming down the pipe at us, that they understand that these are virtuoso violin players at this sort of stuff, at your emotions and your fears and your anxieties. They're in the business of creating them for you and presenting them to you as fact and presenting them to you as reality, so that you will be absolutely destabilised and you'll be left in a position like it was with the Generation game. You'll sit there immobile, you'll sit there mute, you'll sit there unable to respond, and you will watch these horrendous situations go past in real life, in real time, but you will react as if they are 3D, that they are on the TV, that they are removed from you. That's been done to us. That's been done to us by experts, evil experts, who know how to manipulate the minds, who know how to manipulate psychology and emotion. And if you're not conversant with this, you must look up MK Ultra, which was started after the war, which was all the mind control and the horrendous electrocutions they were doing to people's brains, and the injections and the LSD they were giving them, and people were jumping out. The whole 9 yards is just a nightmare if you look into these things. And a lot of these horrendous things happened in Canada. Unbelievable. Just Google and go on and have a look at the MK Ultra program in Canada. And these were massive institutions. These were not little doctors' surgeries. These were top drawer professors. These were people with unlimited government funding, with all the security agencies behind them, to implement these horrendous experiments on people, completely inhuman and in just absolutely unimaginable. And these people are around, they give the stories on the internet, go and watch what they did. Well, in that place there was a surgeon and a guy who became a professor. He was a degenerate, and his friend, I think his name was Albert, but Kinsey was one of them. He was another degenerate, and he rose to prominence like they do. They all get lauded like they do, and he become a professor in one of the top universities called Johns Hopkins in America, one of the top teaching universities. This guy was on the professorship of there, and his name was John Money, and he was a degenerate, and he was a sadist, and he was every parent's worst nightmare. But he had all the credentials. When this particular family met John Money, they were just a rural family that I believe something terrible had been done to them, but they believed it was an accident. And he came and they said, we thought he was like God. That's how these simple people, he was arrogant, he was affirmative, he was a bully, he was just a nasty, evil, degenerate man. And these simple folk who were just unaware that something terrible happened. They had twin boys. They were unaware of all the stuff that was going on in the institutions in Canada. It's all history. You can go and look at it, and within an hour you can come up to speed with all of it. And the two boys, the twin boys, they had an infection that had happened in the penis, in the foreskin, and they had to take them to a hospital, one of these big massive institutions. Do your research on some of these institutions. These parents turned up with these little twin boys, 18 months old, that had no more than an infection that could have been cleaned up, and they were told to take them to this place and get them circumcised. So they went in, trusting completely, like everybody else who goes through these places, and they decided that they were going to operate, they were going to do this operation with a brand new technique that had never been used before. This is what they do. They like to experiment. And it was cauterization, it was heat, it must have been like a laser. And obviously it went wrong, and this little boy, this little twin boy, lost the whole of his penis. It was gone. And the parents were horrified, and in comes Mr. Money. He wrote books. He was a degenerate pervert who concentrated on sex. He was where the word and the term gender originated from. It came from this Murray creature. It wasn't in the lexicon before. This guy termed it, and he broke it down. He was just a sick individual, and he believed that, like, you know, that your sex, you know, was not assigned at your birth. That if you was brought up as an opposite sex, if you had medical interventions, that you could change, that a boy could become a girl, and vice versa. And this was outrageous. People were, he wrote books on it. He was lauded. He was a professor. He was all this. He was the bee's knees. And these people were brought to this guy. This had happened to them, whether it was an accident or whether it wasn't. That, you know, that's for you to look into and decide. But it was awfully, very, very convenient for this evil, perverted, mental patient. And this is what happened to the little boys, and he convinced these parents that the thing to do was to have the rest of his genitalia surgically removed, that he should have a vaginoplasty placed into him or whatever, and you never ever to tell him, none of his family are ever to say a word to him, and you dress him as a girl, you speak to him as a girl, you give him girl. And this is what they done to this poor little boy, who was absolutely the most miserable, frightened little boy. But it gets worse than that, because this lauded professor, when they got up, this little boy was kicking, and he could not adapt to this thing. He was damaged mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and then sexually, because when he had to go back to see this degenerate nightmare of a creature for his therapy, because he was unhappy. He could not respond to what these people were. He didn't know what it was. And this guy videoed these two little boys, and he stripped them naked, and he had them perform sexual performances to show them what they were supposed to do. I think they were maybe 10 years of age, 9 years of age. And he lauded it a great. These two little boys committed suicide. When he found out, they had to tell him in the end. These are experimentations. They come from this Dr. Money, and he put this thing out with nature, and that was the kernel from which this programme now that has been rolled out, this rainbow stuff into the school, where they're going to bring, because alongside of them experiments, there was a lot of other things going on. There was a chemical that had been exposed in the 60s by a brilliant biochemist, totally unusual guy, not the run-of-the-mill at all, thank God. He's Tyrone B. Hayes, and he loved amphibians. He was a biochemist. He was one of the youngest biochemists to be given a professorship at this top university. He was like a genius in this stuff. And he studied amphibians. He was asked to do reports for the environmental health place to do with the amphibians and the aquatic life in the rivers and the streams, with all the industrial farming that was going on and stuff, and that's what he did. And he discovered that one of the main chemicals that was being used to spray all the corn, to spray all the food, to spray all sorts of different stuff, it was a pesticide, like we've got Roundup now, same killer pesticides. And they were spraying it everywhere. It was getting into the rivers. And this guy, this genius blooming microbiologist, he was studying the aquatic life. And to his horror, he found out that this chemical atrazine was producing in the male frogs. It was producing ovaries. Those ovaries were producing eggs. And those males were physically turning into females through this chemical intervention in the hormonal system. And he was stunned. And he reproduced it, and they x-rayed the frogs, and he was showing that the males were growing ovaries, uteruses, producing eggs, and giving birth. These were males, and then after a time, you know, they become completely homosexual. They weren't attracted at all to the opposite sex, and this was just the introduction into their biochemic makeup of one chemical called atrazine. Incredible results, stunning facts. These are not theories, these are facts, and this is what this chemical can do. And he broadcast it. He came out and he wrote theses on it and papers on it and spoke about it, and he was screaming about the dangers of this chemical atrazine, that it was feminising the males, that it was suppressing the hormone, their testosterone. And a weird offside to that is the same company that it was producing the chemical that was lowering testosterone and lifting the estrogen levels, which is feminising the males, and vice versa in the females, are the same company that introduce testosterone medication to try and lift the balance back up. They play both ends of the field. And that was atrazine. And that atrazine was in our water, it was in our water supply. It's been banned in Europe. But I just want you to realise that that principle and that possibility and that reality exists. It's happened. And one of the most frightening things in those experiments that this good man did, this honest man, he lost all his credentials, he got slated and attacked left, right and centre like all honest men do. And what he found is frighteningly that the people that the frogs that were affected, it didn't just stay. That feminisation didn't just stay with that generation. it passed on to the children and on to the grandchildren. It done something to them at a hormonal level. And this was going on for years and years and years with these chemicals and the water and the tap water. I want to tell you another little piece on that about a biochemist and a scientist who I've listened to for years and years and years, called Dr. Edward Group, the third. He's a third generation biochemist. You must go to his site, you must familiarise yourself with every video he's ever made if you want to understand and you'd like to live a little bit longer. And his site is called the Global Healing Centre, and this guy's father worked in, I think it was Fort Detrick, where they made all these biochemicals and all these bioweapons. He worked on them. He was a top biochemist, you know, like the lab in Porton Down now that's working on an antidote for disease X, and like the one that's in Colorado that's working on the Ebola. Ed Group's father was one of these, and he was developing chemical weapon to try and take Castro out with a lot of others, and he came up with a chemical. I think the initials were PCBs or something. There's products now that you get that state that the PCB free. And it was a toxic chemical. And when he found out that behind his back that the government and the military had give it to private industry, and they were now putting it in all the milk cartons, in all the orange juice cartons, and all the thousands of things. If you go and look up PCBs, there's been loads of studies and videos done on it. This was Ed Group's father who done it, and that was an endocrine disruptor. It disrupts your whole endocrine system, your whole hormone system. And then for your teeth, these people are saying, you know, use this toothpaste, use this, it's fluoride, it's sodium fluoride that does this and all. That's another endocrine disruptor that destroys your thyroid. Your thyroid uptakes that chemical, that sodium fluoride, because biochemically, okay, it's very, very similar to iodine when you look at it molecularly. And then what did they do? They've restricted iodine in the food and in different places where they don't even tell you it's essential. You'll die without it. You'll become docile without it. And they withdrew that, and so they tell you now to load your mouth up with sodium fluoride, and then you end up with your hormone system is running off sodium fluoride instead of iodine. And sodium fluoride, by the way, is rat poison that you need to go and have a look at that. They used to use it in the detention camps to make all the prisoners docile, so they trot over to the pits and get shot. There was sodium fluoride in the water. We've got it in the water. Why is it in the water? It's a chemical attack. It was a decision that was made by men and women that's going to wreck your endocrine system. But this stuff stays in your system for 3 generations. So how are you going to normalise the effects from all those years ago, 30 years ago, this has been going on? And when that begins to manifest, when them transformations that took place in those amphibians, and they began to change at a biological level, at a hormonal level, as the testosterone was reduced through this chemical, as their estrogen levels rose, there were the physical transformation. They actually grew, a uterus. They actually grew ovaries. They actually produced. Well, there are mental and psychological stuff going on. If you were going slowly down that route and you were being fed behind your back, these chemicals are leaching into your system, and they are leaching into your hormonal system. Well, that has an effect on your mind. It has an effect on your thought patterns, physically. And in one thing that the professor Tyrone was saying, that the voice boxes became smaller, the voices became higher, they became feminized through chemical attack, through an introduction. And that's what's happened to our young people, because now we're in the 2nd and 3rd generation of these chemicals being consciously introduced into your life, into the products you eat, the products you drink, the bottles of milk you place in your little child's mouth, that they've been loaded with toxic chemicals by evil people. And we've been unaware, and now my age group has stood back and we're saying, my God, what has happened to our children? What is happening to them? That they're being taught that it's okay for a boy to become a girl, for a girl to become a boy, that they brought into the school systems transgender people to teach about subjects that no young child has got any capacity or has got any business having rammed into their young minds at this age. Because these evil people know that these seeds grow, they plant this filth and they plant this diabolical information into young fertile minds that are already being chemically attacked, that maybe that a lot of them probably are third generation of this atrazine poisoning, of this PCB poison, and this is how it's manifesting out in confusion, in teenage suicide, in depressions, in ADHD, and we're taking them for a jab for the flu, we're giving them chemicals for a cold, we're giving them one chemical after another, and the children are being destroyed. And now we've got the rainbow. Goes back a long way. Goes back to Noah's Ark, a new beginning. These people are bringing you a new beginning, and their religion and their philosophy is transhumanism. They want to change the human genome. They want to move you from being made in God's image to being made in their image. These people are your worst nightmare. Their beliefs and their practices and their lifestyles are beyond your worst nightmare. Their normality is something that is going to shock you to the core. But they come smiling. Have a look at the face of this Dr. John Murray. Imagine him coming up to you at 10 o'clock at night on your doorstep. You'd scream, you'd phone the police. He looks about as evil as you can imagine. I was took back with Andrew Bridgen's speech, you know, where he mentioned thalidomide and he mentioned something I didn't know. And I'd just done a video of mentioning, going on about thalidomide, and I didn't know that you were not allowed for 10 years to even mention the name thalidomide in the House of Commons. You couldn't do it. It was against the rules. While these monsters were pouring that into pregnant mothers, and they said that it cures postnatal depression. And you didn't see the horrible demonic face of the CEO. You seen him 15 years later, after they'd all made billions, going into court. And you don't see the horrible faces on like the likes of Dr. Money. What you see is smiling faces, young ladies in white lab coats with a clipboard under their arm, smiling, inviting you into a lovely facility. That's the worm on the hook. And we're so docile, but we're so unquestioning that we just go along like Mowgli, following the serpent, with our eyes going round like we're mesmerised. These schools that get designated talking about following the money get well paid. You can't sit like you're on the Generation Game and this is just another video that goes past your life. You're going to deliver your children to these people. You're going to see them, you're going to have them comb their hair, you're going to have them wash their face and hands, you're going to have them brush their teeth, hopefully no more with anything with sodium fluoride in it. You're going to make sure the shoes are shiny, and you're going to kiss them, you're going to love them, you're going to give them pocket money, and you're going to hand them over to a rainbow assigned school that's going to pour filth all over the minds, all over the brains, all over what they're going to take out and base their reality on. Were you ever asked, were you ever consulted? Fair bet, no you weren't, because these people are sinister. These people are damaged individuals themselves who promote this filth, who promote this stuff. The people who've been attacked with these chemical weapons, you know, they've got my love, they've got my respect, They've got my open arms. But you must appreciate you've been attacked chemically. What you're purporting and what you're involved in is demonic. It is evil. And your minds have been attacked. And you've been biologically attacked through chemical weapons. You are the third generation of these chemical attacks from atrazine and from PCBs. We didn't know what it was going to look like, what it was going to manifest, this trajectory of feminization and our sexuality at a molecular level, at a DNA level, at a hormonal level was going to physically look like on the streets, how it was going to materialise in our reality because it was down the road. These people knew, but now we're stood there and we're aghast and we don't know what to say. We've got to somehow try and accept this as normal. And you can't accept it as normal. You never accepted Bhopal as normal when that chemical plant blew up with the dioxins and killed everyone but me. You can't look at Hiroshima and say, oh well, maybe that's what happens when an atom bomb goes off, as if it's normal. Well, you can't just react the same way that this is normal when a chemical bomb has gone off within you, Grandad, within you, Mum. Our children have been damaged through the mistakes and the beliefs that we adopted. We didn't do our due diligence with these people. We were lulled into a false sense of security, and our children are being decimated. I take it you have noticed when you go for a walk now, the yellow heart defibrillators that have been placed here and there and everywhere for the heart attacks that we're all experiencing. Little children. There's adverts on the TV from the Heart Foundation trying to normalise that little children are going to start getting myocarditis, that little children are going to be dropping dead, that it's normal for little children to have heart attacks. It is not normal. It is a chemical and biological attack that's been done on all of us. And we've got to wise up and we've got to wake up. And you follow the money, because these people, the Bible says that the love of money is the root of all evil. This agenda comes through evil individuals who not only love money, they love evil. And they are bringing you evil, and they expect you to sit back like you're on the Generation Game watching all these little events and all these little news stories and all these little YouTube videos and all these fellas spouting this, that and the other. This is not the Generation Game. You know, this is not entertainment. This is not a video. You know, this is real information. They are attacking your children. They are going to, the books that they use show sodomy in illustrated form. The storybooks that they've got for the children in these designated schools, you couldn't even show on YouTube. They are appalling. They are disgusting. They show fellatio. They show sodomy. They show masturbation. And the whole 9 yards. Nothing is off limits to these people. Nothing is off limits to these people. They have no bottom to them. They will sink as low and as depraved as you, as a mother or a father or as a grandfather, will allow them to do. And we must stop them absolutely dead in the tracks, because these month-long events and designations have been assigned to certain schools. You need to check your area and find out who these designated schools are, and you need to go and speak to the people who are in charge of these institutions that are intending to fill your child's mind with sewerage water that's going to cause them to be depressed, is going to cause them to be unstable. And like the two poor boys that monster Dr. Murray mutilated and abused all their lives, they both committed suicide. This is where this stuff leads. It all leads back to death. You've got to choose life. You've got to stand up and confront these people. This is not a video. This is not a game. This is real life. Go and have a look at your photographs of your little children and your grandchildren. And would you ever dream of sitting down and showing them child pornography while sitting on your knee? No, you wouldn't. These people will. These people are. These people have got it printed and produced. You need to go and have a look at it. We owe it to the children. It's the Birkenhead drill. It's women and children first. always follow the money.